party people? It's your boy Dre, and I'm here once again at long last with my boy Trey.
The long-anticipated return that I believe you teased a lot longer ago than I want to admit. It's taken.
Hey, you know what? We get to it when we get to it, right? We're Nintendo, okay? A rush game is bad forever, right?
That's a way to put it, sure.
No, look, we took our sweet time with this because, honestly, it's a bit of an undertaking, this topic, of which, if you clicked on this, you already know what we're going to talk about, which is the Capcom Five, the illustrious or the stained Capcom Five, I guess, if you're depending on how you want to look at it. But I think we're in the illustrious camp, Trey.
It is fascinating, even if, as of course, quite obviously, we're going to just repeat over and over. It's actually 4, and
yep.
Only one of them stayed on the platform it was supposed to support.
Yes, I think that's part of the reason why this is considered such a weird thing. But honestly, just speaking about it just from the game's perspective, it's pretty fascinating. But we'll get into all the nooks and crannies, I guess. By the way, I don't think we capitalize enough on that are named Dre and Trey. I don't think we'd capitalize enough on our rhyming names. I feel like we could take this on the road.
Oh yeah, it's Silk Dre and Sonic Trey. Yeah, the saga continues.
We're doing it, baby. They're gonna put out a second record. They should really keep doing that.
Probably.
That wasn't a one-off.
Probably. Hope not.
Okay, let's just set the stage here, huh? So it's 2002. You remember 2002, Trey? It was 20 years ago. It's more than that now.
21. 21 now.
Oh boy. The GameCube failing to attract market share, obviously, against the PlayStation 2, and third-party support somewhat. Nintendo went discs for the first time with GameCube, but they were proprietary. They were little guys. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that was the reason or whatever, but the third-party support they lost with the Nintendo 64 hadn't totally returned. Though I do want to say, Trey, to me, it didn't really feel that way. I guess in retrospect, it's kind of true. But the N64 would have never had anything as exciting in its first year as like Resident Evil 2002 or like a port of Sonic Adventure 2 that's considered like definitive, or you know what I mean? I feel like the support was better than given credit.
I mean, by default, Sega going third party definitely, like, it benefited everybody almost immediately.
Yes.
Just by that basis, like, because Monkey Ball's even like right around launch anyway, so that's like that's definitely a game I remember. Oh yeah. That's a game I definitely remember being like, okay, that's GameCube. The Star Wars dealie, old rogue leader there.
Oh yeah,
that where it looks real cool.
See, I don't even care about those games. That's why I always forget about that one, and that's still a technical marvel. You know, like that shit's crazy. But yeah, like it's not as dire as people may have painted it out to be, but it definitely was way better than Nintendo 64. But Capcom in particular, as we said, Resident Evil 2002, or remake, if you will, whatever you want to call it. I just call it 2002 to differentiate from 96. And Resident Evil 0, the same year, basically, supposed to be on N64, moved to GameCube. They had a lot invested in the GameCube's future, So they saw the situation and they decided to make maybe one of the boldest moves in video game history. They announced 5 games on a website. Remember websites? Like when we go to information there for those. And 5 games at once.
Which in itself, just a crazy thing to do just in general.
Yeah, that's wild. Imagine if, like, I don't know, take your pick. Ubisoft just went on, like, go to the secret website, guys, and here's like 5, like, original games. 4. I mean, I guess one of them's Resident Evil 4, but you know what I mean? Like here are a bunch of like cool new things we're going to put out. People would be hype. I don't think anyone wants to look that far in the future now, especially considering what happened to Dead Phoenix and, whatever. But it was such a move. So do you remember when this happened, basically? Because you're younger than me. You were in a different place in your life. I was a grown-ass man, allegedly. So I just kind of remember this just in my lifetime. Did you, as a younger person, remember this announcement?
I'm going to be honest. I knew that Capcom definitely had upped their support from N64 to GameCube. I absolutely you could definitely tell that. I was definitely aware of something like Viewtiful Joe, which we will, of course, mention plenty, for both good and bad reasons. But at the same time, I almost feel like I think by this point, all my news was coming from watching the reruns of GeForce X Play at the time, and I'm sure if they mentioned it, they would be like, "Hey," but I don't think I sought it out as much as I probably would have now.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, I think when it was announced, it wasn't like a super mainstream announcement because you're announcing, like I said, you're announcing games that aren't, nobody's ever heard of. They're new IPs for the most part. The best you could say is Capcom announced Resident Evil 4 if you wanted to make that headline mainstream. But of course they did, right? Who didn't think they were going to make Resident Evil 4, right? So it's not really much of a revelation.
I think the only part about that was supposed to be startling at the time is the fact that they would even put out Resident Evil 4 quote unquote exclusively on the Nintendo GameCube.
Yes, that would have been the headline, and that was the headline until it kind of wasn't the headline because of the back and forth about it. But anyway, I moderated a message board at the time because that's what you did 20 years ago. And boy, let me tell you, it was fucking lit on there. We were going crazy. Look at this, Viewtiful Joe. Look at this art style. Look at the, you know what I mean? We were going crazy over these games. Product number 3, Vanessa. Look at Vanessa Z. Schneider, whoever that is, shaking her ass. Hey, did you forget her name was Vanessa Z. Schneider?
No, when I dug through it, I immediately went. I was like, wow, that's extremely bold that they just this is just randomly you remember how good Japanese companies used to be at having the most generic Anglo-ized names for all of their characters?
Yes. That's why we have the Chris and Claire Redfield. That's why we have Jill Valentine, which is just you know what I mean? Yeah. That's the reason why.
Kind of beautiful.
It is, honestly. But Shinji Mikami actually had a reason. He said he gave her a German last name, a Schneider, because of this, and he named her, a more American first name of Vanessa because of this, and the Z is for. He had a whole reason. I don't think I'm making this up. It sounds like I'm making this up, but I swear to God, I don't think I am.
It seems like he thought a lot about that character, which is extremely strange considering how everyone else just knows her as the glasses lady who shakes her butts.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, it was exciting if you were sort of following game news at the time. It was just great. But let me read the statement on the website that greeted you that I found from either the Wayback Machine or maybe Wiki, or I don't know who archived it, but I found it. So I'm just going to read it verbatim and we can giggle. For the growth of the gaming industry, for GameCube, these words describe our initial thoughts. In an industry where you create to amuse and entertain, do you sense a crisis about the industry's continuing regression of excitement and new stimulation? Yes, we do. We believe that the regression of excitement is solely the fault and responsibility of we creators. By the same token, we believe it is also our mission and responsibility to create something that is quote-unquote worth seeing for the user. In a market that has become prosaic? What? Is that a word?
Prosaic, maybe?
Is a word in a market that has become proactive with character-dependent games and sequel games. We'd like to take this opportunity to announce 5 new and exciting games for GameCube. That was the statement on the site. I mean, when you read that, though, I mean, yeah, it's just PR speak, right? But it's just like, it was exciting. It really was, honestly. We could be cynical now, especially everything we know, but like, it really did get me hyped.
It's kind of weird. This is going to be a weird parallel to make, but I feel like back then, especially in the early 2000s, the Western culture also had its fair share of we'll say, creatives. I mean, I don't think there's any coincidence that there's a developer that was literally called the Gathering of Developers.
Yeah.
Or God.
Yeah.
Or, your Ion Storms or what have you that come through that time where that's where the whole impetus is, these are the creatives. These are the people that make these games. Da-da-da-da. To where, yeah, of course, like, even a Japanese company would start realizing, oh yeah, we do that. We got the guy who made Devil May Cry here. Come on, we can do that.
Yeah, come on, man. So, with that said, the games are, as I'm sure everyone knows, but for posterity, PN03, or product number 3, I would say product number 3, Viewtiful Joe, Resident Evil 4, Killer 7, and Dead Phoenix, which never became alive. So, interestingly enough, and this would never happen nowadays, all these games would be supervised by Shinji Mikami and developed by Capcom's Production Studio 4, except for Killer 7, which of course was developed by Grasshopper Manufacture and co-written by Mikami, along with Suda51. So it was a collaboration, but Capcom's IP, which a lot of people forget about, Trey, which is why, like, we haven't seen Killer 7 outside of that Steam port a few years ago, like, ever, because that's Capcom's IP. Like, I'm sure if it were up to Suda51, he'd be, you know what I mean, whoring that thing out all over the place. But it's just not up to him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that people are way more aware of Killer 7 than, say, both of the Silver Case games, for example.
Yeah. I recently bought those, by the way. They were on sale on PSN for like $4.99 and $7.49 each or something. So I did buy them. So I'm gonna get into those soon.
One day when I think about playing another Suda trip, that would probably be it. That or Shadows of the Damned, for obvious reasons.
Shadows of the Damned is great. I really like that game, but you kind of have to be a Suda person to get it, which you are. So obviously, we laughed in our heads anyway at the GameCube parts of that statement because, as we well know, none of this stuff stayed exclusive to GameCube except product number 3, which nobody cares about, which is why it never got ported. Unfortunately, no one cares about, I should say. So this is from Wiki. I'm just going to read this directly. When pressed for comment on console exclusivity, a Capcom USA representative confirmed the claim, generating the perception that Capcom was hoping to boost the sales of GameCube and reputation. A statement on their website echoed the support for GameCube, the one we just read. However, Capcom USA soon rescinded their confirmation, blaming it on a miscommunication with the parent company. They clarified that only Resident Evil 4 would definitely be exclusive.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
that's the silliest part about all that stuff, for sure. Like, there's, like, even just that first period of time, and I would imagine Capcom USA had to have known this pretty much immediately, that the GameCube was very quickly the last place of that generation, and no matter what, I mean, there's a lot of efforts that have went into actually making it into something, and it still needed like 5 more years and another system and a different device to actually capitalize on any of the progress that they had made.
Yeah. It just unbelievable why they even tried to pretend. Like, all of them reports, even Killer 7, I think, came out the same day as PS2. That one was like day and date. At least the other ones had like a window of exclusivity. I think Viewtiful Joe did. Obviously, product number 3 does forever. And Resident Evil 4 for a bit. But like, it makes me think that like, if Dead Phoenix actually happened, and they may as well just went like, well, sorry, we're just gonna make this for PS2 in like 2007 because the GameCube's dead now, and it just feels like they were just trying to shoo away from that as soon as they said it.
Yeah, just a little bit. I also think obviously that statement's funnier given now how many game systems have had a version of Resident Evil 4. We've literally had it in VR.
Yeah, it's one of the most ported games. It's one of the most ported games of the last 15 years. And we're about to get a remake in a couple months, a full-on remake. As of this recording, this remake is not out. But by the time you hear this, it will be. And, like, it's happening.
Yeah, just a crazy... Which, that is one thing that Capcom got pretty crazy about in the years since, is they went from saying, oh, we're only going to put this out on one system to, oh, we have to put this out on everything. Even if it's, DMC Devil May Cry Definitive Edition.
Oh, man.
We have to put it out on everything.
I don't think that game is that good, but I was grateful for the PS4 version just so I could play it at a frame rate that wasn't ass. Like, we know how bad, like, the PS3 360 got at frame. I mean, they targeted 30. They very rarely got there. And DMC 2013 was a big offender of this. Like, I know they cleaned it up later, but when it launched, it was bad. I don't know if you remember that, but it's terrible.
I'm willing to bet you that I was probably a big idiot that was like, what is this Devil May Cry game? I guess I should play this new one. And then years later been like, oh, that's why they didn't like that. Well, yeah, I wouldn't have liked that either, huh?
Oh my God. Your history with the games is fascinating. Just absolutely fascinating.
I was gonna say, like, that exact era would have been like where I've got like a Xbox 360, and that was the first time I played quote unquote current games for like a significant bit of time. So honestly, I did not really like, and again, none of this makes any sense. Like, why would I have not wanted to play the Devil May Cry games? Because they're very well known. They look very cool, but just what it was.
Yeah, it's so weird. Well, see, now as we go into, I guess we're going to talk about all these games individually, and we're just going to go in order of release because why not? So going into product number 3 here, which came out in September 2003, to very middling to poor reviews. Nobody seemed to like it, and it was discounted pretty heavily pretty quickly. And I remember when this game came out, I just started a job. I had just moved to Nevada, and I had no money to buy stuff. So, like, basically, I had a Cube and a PS2, and I was going to Game Crazy and buying games that I could get used for $10, which got me pretty far. I mean, that's how I played, caught up on all the Devil May Cries, as previously mentioned, and Onimusha's and stuff like that. Like, it did me well, and that's how I bought product number 3 for pretty cheap, pretty fast. Which always made me think this game came out like way earlier than it did because it was discounted so quickly, which happens nowadays, especially if you're an Ubisoft game, LOL, but it didn't really happen back then. And so I don't know what they're banking on for sales for product number 3, but it didn't happen. Anyway, I picked up one cheap, and I really enjoyed myself in the late 2003, early 2004 days of just playing the Vidya. But you, as I just established, you have a weird history with games. Did you even remember this game? Was this game on your radar at all? Did you see it on a magazine, an advertisement, anything? Were you aware of this game's existence?
I'm pretty sure the only way I would have probably found it is if I'm sure there was an X-Play review. I'm going to guess, given the critical stuff of that they probably gave it like a 2 out of 5, which they seem to do a lot for any game that was, I don't know, vaguely challenging to them. Probably, I'll be fairly or if it was, or in fairness, if it's like Drake and the 99 Dragons, where it actually is like as bad as it says it is, but for the most part, yeah. But yeah, to where here's how little I knew about this game though initially. When I started learning about the Capcom 5, my first immediate thought was, oh, that must have been like PN03. That must have been like a temporary title that they did, and it was the third one of those that came out. No, it was the first one, and that was definitely not a temporary title.
Holy shit!
Like that was definitely not their initial. I'm pretty sure that they wanted to come out with that exact title and did it that exact way.
Wow!
And then, like, and then other than that, I also thought it was very similar to, you started seeing Namco especially was getting crazy with this, with their Tekken spinoff, Nina Williams' Death by Degrees.
Oh, God. Oh, no, I completely forgot about that game.
Yeah,
oh, Jesus Christ!
For valid reasons, that's not particularly well remembered in the Tekken lore.
You know, they dumped that game out. I'm sorry, they dumped that game out a month before the port of Tekken 5 to PS2. Do you remember that? They put that shit out like real fast, and then so everyone and buried it by their own Tekken 5. Like, that's how embarrassed they were of Death by Degrees.
Probably the right move to make there. Yeah. But like, unfortunately I think that's the exact, like, and like, this is such a weird era, I guess we could call it the pre-Bayonetta era of the female-led character action game.
Yeah.
Where it was either this or it was something like Blood Rain, where I'm not sure, where you kind of get that the entire target of it is that they're like, we're going to go for the sex appeal parts, and then the game might as well be incidental, because that's not the point here.
Yeah. Although yes, I was of the right age to enjoy Blood Rain for every reason presented to me. But like, you know, I don't know. It's not a bad game by any means. It's just fairly standard with a vampire titty lady is really the appeal. But the gameplay is fine enough, you know, where you could recommend it as a game and not just like, well, it's Blood Rain, you know.
It would have been, yeah, in that era would have been completely acceptable, and obviously it was. There's a reason why that really, really bad movie got made from it. So, you know.
Me and Steve have committed to watching some of those Uwe Boll classics. Like, we've never seen any of those. We've never seen them, but we want to.
Dude, I mean it when I say you better get ready for a ride with all of them. Every single one of them has like at least one, definitely more than one, but definitely a pivotal plot decision that you will look at and you go, what? Why? Why is this happening? What? Huh?
I can't wait. We definitely want to do Blood Rain and House of the Dead. We're going to do like a twofer. This is what we wanted to do, basically. So we'll see if we get the balls. But anyway, so obviously we went back and played all these games to revisit them. I played it back in the day. Trey had never played it till recently. So I want to know your honest opinion in 2023. What do you think of product number 3 now?
I think you can see the exact bones of what later good character action games end up doing, but I also completely understand why that wasn't going to work for anybody, because when you control Vanessa Z. Schneider, you're kind of more of what I would say, just to borrow the phrase from like Zoolander, you're kind of dance fighting.
Okay, yeah.
You're doing acrobatics, and you kind of have to get used to, okay, the way you turn the stick, that's actually going to turn you. That's not going to just make you go this way. In a weird way, it's not quite tank controls, I would say, but it's got, there are definitely some elements that you're borrowing there, and then you're just going around, you know, shooting real nice. And I get why people would say that that's a bad control scheme, but I got used to it. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was perfectly fine. It's definitely something to get used to. You do. I don't think it's unfair to call it tank controls, even though it's not really. But I think people understand what you mean when you say that. I don't think it's totally not applicable here. But kind of, I think that's really the disconnect that I want to talk about here. We've established that it's stylish. It's, you know, you have a main character. They're really trying to make her a, you know, character action character, if you will. And you're doing the shooty bang thing in space, shooting lasers from your palms and shit, which doesn't make any sense, but we're doing it.
Of course.
Yeah, but I think that's what I really want to talk about here with product number 3, bad controls versus deliberate controls. Are they really bad, or are they just something you have to get used to? And I feel like in this day and age, and this would be considered like really unacceptable. Like 20 years ago, practically, it was considered pretty unacceptable by people in an age where you still had games that had pretty quirky controls. You know, especially back, you know, especially the generation before this, we were still trying to figure out 3D, right? And then we did. And then and now we still have controls like this. Because think about it. He's just doing the Resident Evil stuff. You even have a button to turn 180. You know?
Yep.
Like, games didn't really do that before or since.
Yep. I do think that it is very clear that you're seeing a couple of the things that you end up seeing in things like a Mirror's Edge, or not quite the same concept, but a Bayonetta. You know, very, very steely graphic style. Very, as you said, it is deliberate controls. I'm just kind of all over the place on this. I'm sorry.
No, it's all, I mean, but it's an all over the place game because it's very hard to describe, because like after you beat that initial level, then it's like, okay, you go to level 2, but you better not fucking do that, because here's your like farming levels where you can get a whole bunch more like points. Your points are your money in this game. So the better you do, the more money you have, which I like systems like that. But the game is also very punishing because Shinji Mikami, those guys can zap you dead in a couple hits. So it's not easy at all. I think that was the combination, right? Now that we think about it, it was the weird controls you had to get used to, plus it was really punishing game on top of it.
And more importantly than that, obviously we've brought up like the whole character action thing. When we see like a character like Faith or like Bayonetta later, we immediately get the sense of that character, because, you know, you get like a nice little 10-minute cutscene that's just like actually hearing the character talk, actually hearing how they deal with other people. We kind of see that with Vanessa, but it's mostly just, oh, this lady's gonna shake her butt and she's gonna shoot things. And she's gonna tap her feet to the beats of something. You know what? That's kind of a similar connection to a game that we'll never get to play, sadly. A little game called Scalebound.
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, the soul still burns, as they say, right? Like
just the saddest thing. I know that they put it on a platform where they're probably never going to be able to get the ambition, like do anything that was going to make it anything more than like, you know, a 30 FPS game. But that's just, I want it, man. Boy.
It's just, you know, what can you say? You're right though about that. But yeah, I feel like product number 3 never stood a chance. And it's obvious that it didn't. The gameplay concept is unclear. As we said, we were just all over the place trying to describe, well, you're a lady and you shoot, you have laser hands, but you're in space, but your name is Vanessa Z. Schneider, but you don't really have much of a personality because you don't talk till like chapter 13. You know what I mean? Like it's weird, right? And they want you to care about this main character, but they're not a Bayonetta. They're not a Dante, right? So you can't get into them that way. It's just pure style, which is okay with me, but not okay for most people. And I totally get why, which is, like I said, character driven with no character. The art style at the time, though, that sort of like sterile, white, cold as ice, like sci-fi art style wasn't really in vogue. I feel like in 2003, that wasn't really happening.
Oh, yeah. Closest thing I could think of that would have that sort of relationship, and unfortunately, I feel like this would be more of a negative to it, but it also became like a cult hit for later years anyway, be like, Equilibrium, the movie from 2002. Yeah. Something to that extent, those cold textures or what have you, and, Christian Bale trying not to cry, even though the whole point of the movie is that you're not supposed to cry, all that.
Gattaca, maybe?
Oh,
like
Gattaca.
Movies like that?
Oh, that's, both, and another thing that would be in common with those, both of those movies also did not do well at all.
No, they did not. So this was maybe just not the time for that. That's something I always say about Panzer Dragoon as well. Like, it felt so like 80s fantasy in the mid 90s, which was like not what was happening at all. To me anyway, like it felt so like 1983 type of fantasy. Whereas like in 95, 96, we were just not looking for that. I don't think people think of Panzer Dragoon that way, but that was always my assessment. Anyway, yeah, and then like I said, the unrelenting difficulty, it requires you to grind unless you're just going to ace the game right away, which you're not because it's too hard. So unless you played it before, you're going to have to grind on those like itty bitty levels, which is fine, but like it makes the game progress slow and it's just not for everybody. And I get it. But there's one other thing that clearly took inspiration from product number 3. And obviously it's Vanquish. Right, Trey? I mean, like, it's the like I said, the white, sterile sci-fi. I feel like Vanquish eventually made good on product number 3's motif, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, they did slice in a couple of, the third-person action techniques of that time that were becoming more prominent in the 360 era. I didn't want to say Gears of War because I know that there's a significant difference. But cover exists.
Yes.
Too. So, make of that what you will.
It sure does. And you know what, though? I love Vanquish. I recently played the PS4 version on PS5, so you get that lock 60. It's not a perfect game by any means. It wasn't perfect at the time. There are too many cheap deaths and stuff. There's definitely stuff that could be cleaned up about it. But goddamn, I love Vanquish. I do. I'm a Shinji Mikami man through and through.
I've got to play more than just the first section of Vanquish at some point in my lifetime, and I'm sure I will. But I did enjoy what I played at that time, of course. Like, and I'm so stylish.
I do enjoy the self-insertion of a character named S. Mikami. I definitely did enjoy that.
That's almost getting to Hideo Kojima levels of self-inserting, but not quite. If Shinji Mikami named himself and put himself in a game, at that point, Hideo has done it many times. many times. Okay. I'm surprised he didn't do it in Death Stranding. Honestly,
but I was going to say how you don't rescue his like dead body or something. So as anyone can surmise, product number 3 didn't sell well. It's very hard to find sales figures from this era or really any era, but Capcom sent 25,000 copies to Japanese stores and sold about 11,000 of them, I think, in its first week, and I don't think it got any better from there. Worldwide figures are obviously murky, but it's safe to say this probably didn't sell any better than that anywhere else, any other part of the world. So we can safely assume like 40K copies, maybe, if we're going to be generous.
And as you said quite famously, it was already getting on the cheap very early into its, ill-fated run. So it's probably, it's safe to assume they probably did not exactly do particularly well. And you haven't heard anything about it in the past 19 years since. So it's not like Capcom thought anything of it past that point.
Nope. It's unfortunate. I don't ever see this game ever being released again on anything ever, which, look, that's fine, but maybe way in the future when we get really old, it'll be on like a Capcom 50 disc or something like Atari 50.
It would be, I mean, that Capcom does a better job than others finding like a lot of their older stuff that wasn't quite the big sensation hit that it should be, so I mean, that's got to be a better chance than, like, I don't know, if Konami had put it out or something.
Yeah. Well, I think we can. I'll speak for both of us. Actually, we like Product Number 3. If you were into archiving games, wink, wink, I definitely suggest you give it a try. And in this day and age, I feel like it has a lot to offer somebody who really wants to put some time into it. It's not an obvious game, but it will reveal itself to you eventually. When we come back, we're going to talk about Viewtiful Joe. Be right back. All right, we're back. I'm not going to say what we did because, unlike Kevin on the regular show here, I'm not going to tell all of Trey's business.
I'm a very private person. Very famously have no presence online, so no one knows anything about me.
No, you are a specter, an enigma, if you will. Okay, Trey, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we must talk about Viewtiful Joe.
You mean to tell me, talking about the debut of probably one of the most infamous development studios inside a major company in history, maybe, perhaps?
Yeah, Clover Studios. Well, they weren't called Clover Studios on this. I think they were credited as Team Viewtiful. But it was basically Clover Studios. Like I think by the time the PS2 version of Viewtiful Joe came around, it said Clover. I think I never played that version.
And of course, the big thing in mind was the big hand of old Hideki Kamiya.
Yep.
Who, of course, if somehow you are not aware of Hideki Kamiya by 2023, by all the weird sagas that have happened in the past 20 years involving him, he's a creative force at Capcom at this time.
I think he had directed to this point Resident Evil 2 and Devil May Cry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So literally two of their most, to this day, most beloved IPs. Yep. And then he's putting this in out here, and definitely way more of a in comparison to the stylish, violent action stylings of a Devil May Cry. This is stylish as well, but it is very much way more attempting to be like a Saturday morning cartoon. Maybe a little bit of Power Rangers mixed in there, what have you.
Yeah, there's some putty men, as I've grown to know that they are called. I've never really watched Power Rangers, but now I know that. And yeah, it's that Super Sentai type of thing, right? He has a fetish for that, as we well know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he literally. You could tell by the art style here as well. Like a lot of cell shading, which is getting pretty hot at the time. A little game that you may have discussed already called Jet Sets Radio, Jet Grind Radio.
Jet Grind Radio, I was going to say, even though...
Well, they did rename it later, yeah.
I think the best thing about that, by the way, is that the game just says Jet Set Radio. They don't care. It's just the game is called Jet Grind Radio, but you turn on the game and Professor K goes Jet Set Radio. So it's like, who cares? I don't know why they're... Anyway, it was weird.
They loved grinding back then, man.
Yeah. I was looking forward to this game so much. This was a game that was completely up my alley. The cell shading, the characters, the character style, the music that I heard, like from clips from the grainy QuickTime video clips online on IGN that I saw. Everything about this game looks so fucking cool. Like, okay, again, I know you were in a weird place at this time, but tell me, you had to have noticed this game, right? You, like, surely.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. That I definitely did. This one, this and obviously RE4 and Killer 7 to a lesser extent, but these were definitely considered the best of just what Capcom was even putting out at that time.
Yeah.
This one is the first of this bunch to get exceedingly glowing reviews for it. People loved this game. And, of course, Kami himself ends up, really honing in what he ends up doing with, later with a Bayonetta, with Wonderful 101, certainly, where these characters are kind of weird, they're kind of quirky, but they're also very fascinating.
Yeah, but, like, in this game, they're very over the top cartoony, right? Because it's like all Joe cares about is like watching this movie, and Sylvia just wants to like give him a blowjob in the theater, and he's just like, "No, Sylvia, stop," or whatever.
It is the closest I have ever seen a video game get to just outright saying, "Dude, you know what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to blow you, dude." Where I'm like, wow, that's all right. Let's go.
Rated T for teen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, so it starts out like that and you get sucked into the movie, and it's like, I love the motif, and anyone who's a listener of the regular show already knows what I'm about to say. Trey, I did not like Viewtiful Joe at all. Like, again, the characters are great. The voice acting, I actually really enjoy too. I that's not something I usually make note of, but even at the time I was like, whoa, I love the way like this sounds. The music is great. It might be one of the most shallow games I've ever played. It's a 10-hour game that you get sick of in 15 minutes. I am over it, especially by the time like you get like the slow down move. Okay, you just slow motion punch everybody. Okay, the game is over. Wow. Yeah,
I will gladly say that is. I think we will be in agreement on this. That I understand why that was novel at the time. That's the slow motion kind of technique that we're still in the afterglow of the Matrix. I mean, Max Payne's literal entire gimmick is that, oh, you're doing cool slow-mo, like that's literally a button for that purpose. But now, especially, it feels like a slog getting through everything here. It feels like I am like, okay, I'm just holding this down, not holding it, holding it again. This is the kind of case where that feels like controls I'm not liking. It's not
it controlled okay to me. I just couldn't stand doing the same thing. Okay, then you speed up and punch some guys, or you solve a couple of shitty little puzzles using the slowdown or speed up. It gets old so fast. That first level lasts forever. I enjoy the music, and stuff at like the first few minutes, but after 20 minutes of hearing the same thing and punching the same guys and doing the same it's just like enough. you know? And then you think, okay, maybe that's just the first level to get you into it and it'll get more interesting later on. It doesn't. It really doesn't. So this game to me is a big old flop. I know people love it. I know it's probably, besides Resident Evil 4, of course, the most beloved of the Capcom 5. And it really showed the potential of like, okay, we're really going to make this new original IP and we're going to bring it to the people and it's going to be a hit. And it was a decent enough hit. But man, Trey, think about even like Final Fight or like Capcom's beat 'em up prowess. You know what I mean? I'll never get tired of those games. And that game, you use like a button to punch guys. There's something so satisfying in like you're going through the bar, you're going through the disgusting, you know, park bathroom, you're going through the steel girders in the warehouse or whatever. Like there's so much to it, right? Yeah, you're going forward, and there's so much variety in like the guys attacking you and their patterns and all the different people, 2P, Andor. You can name them, right? You can name all the enemies in Final Fight. Elgato.
Poison.
Yeah. Axel and Slash, right?
Oh, yeah.
But in Viewtiful Joe, you're just punching the putty men. Right? So it's just like, okay, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is like even beat 'em ups from like 15 years prior at that point felt like more complete and robust than Viewtiful Joe. I just thought that was embarrassing.
I think you and I fought for famously. I am not against the idea even of like taking down like thousands of mooks in one go because I love the Dynasty Warriors games.
We both do.
But at the same time, famously. But at that same time, there is a fluidity to it, a consistency to it that makes me feel good. Where honestly, when I'm like slowing down to do it, as I said, it just doesn't. Look, I realize that's gonna. The people that actually really enjoy this game are just gonna be like, "Oh, he's just mad because he didn't want to use the slow down button all the time." Yeah.
Yeah,
because that's it. That's it. Boring. I'm sorry. Yeah, it doesn't feel. It feels okay at first, and then you realize how much everything's kind of repeating itself, and you realize, oh, this just doesn't feel. This does not feel as fun as mowing down hundreds of enemies should feel like.
Sure doesn't. So, but honestly, like I said, though, I was really looking forward to it. So this was a huge letdown for me. It wasn't just like I picked it up at the store one day. Oh, what's this? This isn't very good. And I threw it away. I was really on this game's tail. So it was disappointing. I even remember reading in some magazine or that doesn't usually cover video games. So I want to say like a Forbes or, you know, like one of those kind of magazines.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they were doing something on Capcom and they were talking about their upcoming games and they said, and then they have Viewtiful Joe, a translation of the Asian hit. What?
Oh, yes, famously that famous game we all know about.
Well, yeah, but like, did they see the word "beautiful" and think like they must have misspelled something? They couldn't have meant "beautiful," right? Like that's not a word. Like,
oh boy,
yeah, that struck me as weird even at the time.
You said a translation of the Asian hits?
Yeah, not even Japanese. The Asian hit.
Oh boy,
I don't know who wrote that article, but I was just like, okay, that's a weird one. But as I said, this game didn't do too bad. On GameCube, it sold 275K. On PS2, the eventual port, it sold 46K. So people first and foremost thought of this as a GameCube game. That's where the hype was, and I think obviously it's where the sales went. So 275, honestly, it's not bad.
Yeah, I would imagine. I can't imagine that a game like that costs all that much at that time to make. I just can't. Maybe I just don't really know for sure, but I would imagine that cell shaded technique is something that a lot of these game companies were doing very, very well, just to make sure that they didn't have to Shadow of the Colossus all of their games to have these big environments, big graphics.
Yep.
all this stuff and what have you.
Well, yeah, because that's where we were headed at the time. But as far as being cheap, Trey, you were absolutely correct, because the producer of this game, Atsushi Inaba, now we know as the CEO of Platinum Games currently, he said, and this is from Wiki, while this was lower than expected sales, it was enough to be somewhat profitable considering the low budget.
Yeah, I would imagine Platinum used to be pretty good about... well, I'm only saying Platinum specifically just because of Inaba's name in there, but anything before this I would say as well. They used to be very, very good at seeming like they were both very frugal, and that being a lot of the reason why the games that we end up seeing from them end up coming to pass in the first place.
Yeah, and it allows them to do what they want to do while, keeping budgets low and keeping expectations in check. But now that, where they are now, oh boy, that's another topic.
Babylon's Fall!
Oh, Babylon's Fallen, everybody.
I was about to say Bayonetta 3, but apparently you and Steve might be a little bit on the lower end of what people are thinking about that game, because apparently people seem to like it better than I expected they would.
Nah, we didn't like it that much. What can we say? We're just two guys. But moving on from that, Viewtiful Joe was October 2003. There would be no other Capcom 5 game in 2004. Because Resident Evil 4 missed its initial release date. I forget what it was, probably holiday 2004. But it got pushed to January 2005.
And the mess begins.
Yes. So I want to start here, actually. I remember this game came out the same day as Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, which is weird to think about now, but I remember buying both those games on the same day.
Yeah. I would also say kind of an interesting trend of what ends up happening with later Resident Evil games. That it comes out in January, as we've seen a couple times there now that they've pulled that release date out as they've felt necessary.
Yeah, they'll do whatever they feel like. The exclusivity or thereof of these games, the Capcom 5 has always been, back and forth debated or whatever. Is it going to be on GameCube only or not? Resident Evil 4 had the strangest. So and I'm just going to read this directly from Wiki just because it was wild. So starting here, Resident Evil 4 was the only game of the 5 to remain confirmed as a GameCube exclusive. Mikami claimed that he would, quote, cut his own head off, end quote, a Japanese colloquialism for quitting his job, if it were to be released on another platform. However, just 2 months before the game's January 2005 release, Capcom revealed that a PlayStation 2 port would be published 9 months after the GameCube version in response to pressure from users and shareholders. Now, you know what, though? Reading that in retrospect, Trey, that is actually really fucked up to Nintendo. If you're going to give them exclusive, just say so. Think about what we do nowadays. Yeah, we know in a year, Ghostwire Tokyo is going to be on, Xbox Series X or something. You don't have to be, you don't have to sandbag the game 2 months before it comes out, right? I think that's actually really fucked.
Yeah, same logic as to, Forspoken will probably be on a Xbox console someday.
Yeah.
But we're not hearing it literally right now where they're going, oh yeah, Forspoken's coming out on Xbox in October, so get ready, guys.
Yeah. I mean, they at least waited until Sonic Adventure 2 was out for Dreamcast before they said, oh yeah, it's coming to GameCube in 9 months. At least they did that.
And that's Sega's own system.
Yeah.
It's not like they have anything to account for to be oh, we have to have this stay exclusive, other than just they had the system and then they don't anymore.
That's such a shitty thing to do in retrospect. It's just, come on, man. But yeah, Mikami apologized to GameCube fans for failing to uphold his promise of console exclusivity. Despite these corporate conflicts, the game received an overwhelmingly positive critical reception, blah, 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 blah. So that's basically what happened there. Okay, obviously, this is one of the biggest games of all time, most popular games of all time from this point forward. This is, I mean, not a game I like very much. Unfortunately, I think, again, anyone who's a regular listener of the show knows this. This was a big, big disappointment to me. Up until this point, Resident Evil was my favorite series. Let me say that again. Up until this point, Resident Evil was my favorite series. My absolute favorite. Those first 6 games, the PlayStation original, 2, 3, Code Veronica, 2002 on GameCube, and Resident Evil 0. I loved those games to a degree, Trey, that I don't really talk about very much because what comes after is, whatever. But I was honestly that into Resident Evil.
And here's going to be the surprise on my end. The whole what's this kid's brain like in the 2000s element of me. I was just kind of okay with them.
Okay.
I was all right with them. I did play RE2 on N64. I want to say at some point. I can't tell you if I remember that at all. But although some of this is also pretty obvious, it would be I owned an N64. I didn't own a PlayStation until way later, to the point. And for some reason, the only games I wanted to bother to go back to were like Final Fantasy VIII. And I don't know why Final Fantasy VIII of all of them.
Ew.
Yeah, kind of the first game that I ever felt like I needed to have a guide just to move right and left. It's real weird. It's real weird to me. I don't know why that felt that way.
You know what I saw recently? Those tutorials in the menus, those long ass like annoying tutorials, they only added that for us. Those aren't in the Japanese game.
They probably had faith that they weren't some American kid who's of 12 years old that's like, what is this game? Oh, okay. I guess I gotta do a fantasy now. But
Ma, what's a junction?
What is a junction? A valid question.
So I guess so you've played them, but you weren't like in love with them. They weren't your favorite thing. For me,
not really, no.
Resident Evil was. So when this came out and it's not survival horror, and I don't care. And look, I don't care. Anyone out there, you love Resident Evil 4, everyone does. That's perfectly fine. It's not survival horror. It's not. And I'm not doing the thing like a hipster saying like, oh, that isn't real rock music or something. I'm not doing that. It's just simply not.
It's action horror. That's fine if it's action horror, but at the same time, you are still very much fully in control. And plus, honestly, not to go into the, is this scary or what is scary?
Right.
It's really more just kind of like the Resident Evil games almost famously can lean into being a bit comical. Obviously, people make the jokes about the early games' voice acting and the goofier plot elements and all that stuff. But even then, like, when you have like scenes that are supposed to be like dramatic and violent, like this chainsaw cuts off Leon's head, and he's just like, just kind of grossing it out there, just Leon's head just all the way off.
There it is, his head.
Look at it.
But you're right though. You would think like maybe they thought those goofier elements couldn't work in a modern setting. It can. I mean, I don't know if you've played Resident Evil 2 2019. But they stayed true to it. Yeah, it's amazing. They stayed true to the original completely with the goofy ass like police station with like weird secrets and emblems you have to find because video game, right? Oh, this place used to be an old museum. Okay, fine, but that doesn't explain why you have like here's the gargoyle key or like whatever, right? Like that doesn't, you know what I mean? Like they made that stuff consistent in a fully 3D behind the back environment, right? Without tank controls.
It's kind of crazy. Although I guess I'm not that surprised that it took them 15, 20 years to like figure out, okay, this is how we could actually do this. And of course, quite famously, it took them changing this formula so many times, although not in the ways you would want. In the sense, certainly in the sense of something like 6. I don't know why. Although I will say, I don't know. I almost don't want a dogpile in 6 because I feel like it's almost too much of an obvious thing to say. Oh, this is the bad one. This is the good one. Where it's like, no, they all have had their messier elements that's just don't quite work the way they should.
No. And I feel like Resident Evil 4 is the catalyst for that. And again, you can like this game all you want. That's fine. I'm not taking anything away from anybody. For me, it just wasn't the Resident Evil experience I wanted at all. And I kind of knew that going in, although I was hopeful that it wouldn't be. I'm sorry we're not talking about actual Resident Evil 4 that much, but honestly, I just don't know what else there is to say because it's such a ubiquitous game at this point.
At this point, it's really like you're aware. Like I almost was going to make like a crack to be like, are they going in RE4 remake? Are they going to have to change Ashley Graham's name because they can't? Because they're like, oh, now this hot lady who's named Ashley Graham is like super famous now. We can't. They gotta
keep it.
I got to. Yeah,
they gotta keep it. Though I do want to ask one question about this game pointedly. Is that how much did you really see this coming as far as like the game's reputation? Because did you play it when it came out and like, did you feel like, oh, this is some sort of next level shit? Things are different now.
Honestly, yeah, I did.
Okay.
I rented it at Blockbuster, and I will readily admit, don't take 2004, 2005 Trey's taste of GameCube games at Blockbuster to be this big end-all be-all. I'm pretty sure that literally weeks after this came out, I also rented Spartan Total Warrior for the GameCube.
Oh, God.
Which, bless him.
Trey is renting Gotcha Force for the 5th time.
I actually never played Gotcha Force. That's the weirdest thing.
I bought Gotcha Force for like $15. I was like, this is just crappy custom robo. I mean, it's fine, but whatever.
Yeah, that's a weird. Again, this is when I tell you that I'm starting to get the impression I may have quote unquote bought the wrong system. I genuinely, nowadays in 2023, I genuinely don't think that's actually a thing. If you can't find like fun stuff on PlayStation, Xbox, whatever you have, you're probably not looking hard enough.
No.
But what I mean in this sense is I'm pretty sure I wanted to play sports games, which I don't know if you know this, but they kind of stopped doing those pretty quickly in the GameCube's life when no one was buying them. Action games, which they got a Splinter Cell or 2 in there, and like Metroid Prime, but I also think that being an idiot of that time, I really enjoyed Metroid Prime, but I don't think I could appreciate it the same way I would now, because I'm sure my first thought is, there's too much exploring in this game. The main thing about Metroid, so
too much. I'm bumbling around. I ran into the same dead end again.
What's going on here? Yeah, but even then, with that broken brain kid mindset, it was exactly what it was promised to be, which was this hyper violent game. You have a different camera angle. It was, as I said, way more of an action game at that point. You had the different environments and what have you. You had Spanish people yelling probably swears at you.
Probably.
We don't know. I'm not sure for sure, but I mean, you'd have to assume as much. And at that time, yeah, I don't know if I would have seen it being seen as like one of the best games ever, but I also think that there's plenty of games that came out at that time that were heavily hyped. A lot of people bought them, and then suddenly we extolled upon them like, oh, this Metal Gear Solid, that is one of the best games ever. And you kind of go, oh, I guess I didn't think about it that way, at that time.
Yeah, I totally get that perspective on your end. But here's mine, basically. So when this came out, I wasn't sure how it was going to go forward, but I knew it was going to be a big deal because all the people's opinions who I didn't trust, who I didn't like, love this game. Who were always like, I tried to play Code Veronica and I quit in 10 minutes because it was stupid or whatever, like those kind of opinions. But this game is awesome. It's like, oh no, the wrong people like this, you know? And me as a Resident Evil fan is like, here we go. And I'm playing through the game and it's not what I want at all. At all. It was not Resident Evil to me, but it was clear that this was going to become Resident Evil to the world. It was no longer the thing I loved. And I guess that just has to be fine because, yeah. But, I guess the thing I didn't see coming was the template for AAA, right? Like the QTEs, the way ammo even goes and stuff. Even the guy who you get buy or store weapons from or whatever, like everything. I felt like that was like the template for QTE for I almost called AAA QTE, but honestly, for those 5-6 years, what's the difference? You know what I'm trying to say though. Like
we had literal games in the 360 era that were just QTE the game. Little game called Asura's Wrath, if you want to bring up another Capcom joke.
That is one of the worst games I have ever played in my life. I'm not joking.
Well, it's not really a game. It's after a certain point.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into the dumb, the discourse of, what is a game? Is it this walking simulator? But after a while, no, you're watching an anime, and then you kind of hit a button at some point, which, I like anime. I am almost okay with that. But then after a certain amount of time, I'm like, yeah, but then I'm just glad that this coincided with the trend of blank blank the movie videos on YouTube, because that is a far better way to experience that than actually having to play it.
That is a superior way to experience Final Fantasy VIII. I'll tell you that much. So don't ever play that. Go watch the Final Fantasy VIII movie on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll say this. The story of Final Fantasy VIII, they tried a lot of stuff with. That's about the highest positive I could give it.
So, as of this recording, as we said, the Resident Evil 4 remake is not out yet, but by the time everyone hears this, it will be out. So should we make any weird future past predictions on how this is going to be received? And by the way, despite everything I just said, I'm actually interested in this. I do actually want to play this.
That one, I will say, the weirdest thing about this is maybe it's partially because we literally had a version of Resident Evil on every single thing of Resident Evil 4 that's been on literally every single thing that seems to exist. I'm pretty sure you could get this on your refrigerator right now if you really want to. Play RE4 in your fridge. See Leon's head chop off while you're chopping some onions, good stuff.
Hot.
But at this point, when they announced this specific one, I was almost kind of like, what are you going to do to it? It's kind of a AAA style game now. The only thing I could think of is minor tweaks to how aiming works and all that stuff, and then that's just becomes neither here nor there anyway. So but at the same time, they've done a mostly I know you received the 3 remake differently than I have, to where I was like, I thought it was okay, and you thought it was not at all good.
No, I didn't like Resident Evil 3 remake.
And but we both liked the 2 remake, and I would argue that's probably the strongest Resident Evil project they've done. God, it's been a while. I like that better than 7, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I don't like 7 at all either, so.
I didn't play 8 yet, and I'm sure I will someday, because I'm sure the growing urge of a giant lady, that's just going to have to happen at some point, I'm sure, as life
If you
gets.
don't say the phrase vampy mommy milkers on this show, I don't know what to do with you right now.
Is she supposed to be a vampire?
I don't know. Who cares? Look at her.
Mommy milkers. Okay.
I really think this is gonna be interesting, but like you said, I don't know what they can do to it. For me, it's just graphics on PlayStation 5 is really the reason why I'm interested. But like,
oh yeah, it's gonna probably look really damn great, because for any criticism you could have of the 4 RE Engine Resident Evils, no matter what, they've all looked very good.
Oh,
and very good on different types of hardware, to where they look freaking great on a base PlayStation 4. They're going to look fantastic on a PlayStation 5.
Were they running 60 on a base PlayStation 4? Because like, yes. I feel like, because that engine seems like
base PlayStation 4 and Xbox One for RE2 remake. It's 7 as well.
Yeah, just really performant, really cool engine. But yeah, as what we alluded to earlier with like undercutting the GameCube, it worked in the sales department because the GameCube version sold 1.6 million, the PS2 version sold 2 million, and there's no doubt in my mind that wouldn't have happened if they didn't announce the PS2 version like weeks before the GameCube version came out. So
I also really wonder, and this is more the cynical side of everything, that if it didn't get that delay of that long period of time, if it actually did, they were able to stick to their guns, put that out in 2004.
Yes.
If Capcom themselves would have had just a smidge more confidence that, like, because we're in that generation where we do have we have games that are honest to goodness system sellers. Grand Theft Auto, of course, at this point, literally just minted PlayStation 2s. I mean, PlayStation 2 was going to be a hit system anyway, but I do know friends and, family, what have you, that was their main draw to getting a PlayStation 2, was like a Grand Theft Auto or Microsoft or Xbox with Halo. I wonder if they had just that little bit more faith that, like, well, Resident Evil is like this big, like, say what you want about the movies, but they were actually successful movies.
They were, like, unfortunately.
But there's a media franchise based around this property. It probably would sell a few GameCubes there, especially towards the end when, like, that thing was cheaper than the other systems at that time anyway.
Yeah, totally agree. And yeah, I really am looking forward to this Resident Evil 4 remake. I'm here for it.
So we'll be ready, and when this comes out in 2027, and then you find out, like, oh yeah, Andre thinks this is the worst game that's been put out in the past 10 years, and then we'll all have a good hearty laugh. They're gonna say, Balan Wonderworld. I'd rather have a Balan Wonderworld than this.
There's no way I'm gonna say that. Okay, I'm going to guarantee it right now on Fine Time. The Resident Evil 4 2023 is going to be better than Balan Wonderworld. That is, I'm not going to put that on Place Your Bets with Kevin, but I'm going to,
a 1-to-1 bet.
Yeah.
A literal straight line.
Yes, just straight flat line.
Balan. So the exact opposite of any of the great football probability graphs we've seen, just a straight, full line, 100%.
Oh boy. Okay, let's take a break and we'll be back with more Capcom 5. Sorry, I lied. We won't be right back because we went too long talking about the Capcom 5, so this is just part 1 of what is going to be a 2-part discussion. Join us for part 2 in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening.